Before I start this video, I want to be very clear that this video is me talking to black people. I'm not talking about any other racial groups. I'm not talking about any other groups, period. Some may be mentioned, but it has nothing to do. It's not an indictment on them. It's more a reflection on us. I believe that black people allow far too many people to use the civil rights movement in this country, and we allow them to use it to win us over, pull on our heartstrings to get our support. And we, because we're emotionally attached to it, rightfully so, we get behind these groups. The problem is, once those groups get what they want from us, which is support, they move on. So we saw that with Black Lives Matter, which was a trans activist group, had nothing to do with our race. They just put black in there. They threw a fist in there. They used our skin color, our pain, our dead young men to promote what they wanted out of society. It worked. We see people like Patrisse Cullors move off into Topanga Canyon and get $1 million home and live around in a gated community around white people. The very people that she was supposedly rallying us against. They just leave. From an economic standpoint, black people, for the most part, have been pretty pro-open border. Not fully open, but we empathize and sympathize, rightfully so, because there are a lot of people who are being harmed. But again, when politicians get a hold of these issues that they want to push, they say black and brown people. They say black and trans people. They use us as if we have anything to do with these issues. They connect us, lock us in, gain our support, and they move on. If you look at society right now, we are still at the bottom. Why? We can't even talk about the issues in the black community because the elitists in the black community, the educated in the black community, do not want to have a conversation about black problems. So it's always weird to me when people say, well, what is your solution? Well, my solution is that we at least need to be able to talk about the problem before we can establish solutions. Why am I bringing this up? For black Americans, and again, this isn't about race, this is just to make my point about what we do and how we're so supportive to other people and other people aren't supportive to us. For black kids, I say kids, but they're probably in their 20s and 30s. Young lady named Latavia McGee. And I think Eric Williams is the other one. I'm not going to name the other two. I'll put them up, but I'm not going to name the other two because they're deceased. This story just happened last week. They just found out who was still alive a couple of days ago. But it wasn't a big story here, and I don't understand why. Back to the story. 4 black people, the young lady Latavia McGee wanted to get a tummy tuck. She figured she could save a couple grand by driving down from Texas to Mexico, get the procedure done for cheaper, come back up here, all is good. They even get a little trip out of it. She invited her cousin and either some friends or some other cousins. They go down into Mexico. Almost immediately, they start getting shot at. 2 of the 4 were killed. I think it was Mr. Williams who was injured. He was shot, but he wasn't killed. This is all caught on video, by the way.
With that breaking news out of Mexico, officials there now say that they have located the 4 Americans abducted last week. They sadly report that 2 of them are dead. The video of their kidnapping is so troubling and terrifying. You can see what investigators believe are members of a Mexican drug cartel loading the group into the back of a truck. This happened in broad daylight, as you can very well see, after a shooting that left at least 1 bystander dead.
whatever the motivation is really doesn't matter, because what happened happened. These people were disappeared for, I think it was 3 to 4 days. So, first of all, it couldn't be a more tragic instance of something happening when you're just trying to travel to do something and try to make a little trip out of it. They think they're just taking a trip into Mexico, which I believe has the highest crime in all of the Americas, I believe. So North America, South America, I believe they have the highest crime of all of us. As soon as they got across the border, they started getting shot at. 2 of them were killed. They were thrown into the truck as if they're not human. Mixed stories are coming out now, whether it was a ransom, whether it was a mistake. It doesn't matter. It happened. They know who did it. It was a specific cartel who runs that area. They know where the order came down. But again, they don't know if it was a mistaken identity, misunderstanding, whatever. I don't really care. What I do care about is when we promote open borders, this is the people who are coming across. These are the people who are coming across. We have to be more selfish, not in a one individual from an individual perspective, but we have to be more selfish from our race and focus on our issues and stop worrying about everyone else. Let them fight their battles. We fought our battle. We're still fighting other battles. And instead of focusing on that, we're getting into these other causes. We're going into marches with these other people. We're allowing, look at what happened in Atlanta. We're allowing white people to come into our cities, destroy them.
Welcome back, everyone, here to Live Now from Fox, everyone. We appreciate you joining us here. We're now taking you out to our next story here. What started out as a peaceful protest against the death of a Georgia-based activist took a violent turn in downtown Atlanta Saturday night when people began throwing bricks at buildings and setting fire to police vehicles. In a joint news conference, Atlanta mayor and police chief made their stance on it very clear that they will always support and protect the First Amendment right to peacefully protest. There is no room for violence in Atlanta. And right now, 5 of those suspects appearing in court right now.
And they're doing it under the guise of helping us somehow. It doesn't help us. They destroy our communities. And like I said before, they just move on. When they're done with us, they move on. Every 2 to 4 years, they're going to come around, ask us for our votes, tell us how terrible we have it and how they're going to help us. They're going to save us. The government's going to protect us. Just let your families go. You don't need family. You need a village. So they discarded 2 of the bodies. And they kept the 2 who were alive, and we're going to do a ransom situation. We don't know if that was successful. We don't know what the FBI did to get them back. We don't know if we paid the ransom, but they ended up back in the FBI's hands. And I guess they were able to tell the story. So the young lady, mother of 5 or 6, was just going for a tummy tuck, ends up losing 2 friends or family members and having another one shot. And an experience that there's no way she'll ever forget. And her entire family is going to be impacted for the rest of their lives. It's why border security is so important. It's why we need to discuss these things rather than just jumping on to other people's causes. It's really, really important that we start looking into these things and stop blindly supporting people because we empathize. We have to stop. This was a preventable tragedy. We should not be going to Mexico at all for anything. About 20 years ago, maybe longer, actually it's probably longer than 20 years ago, I went with a young lady to Mexico, rented a car, wanted to drive down and go to a beach. We just wanted to go see something different, try something different. This is when I lived in California. Went through the San Diego border. About 10-15 minutes into Mexico, we got pulled over by federales. Now, I was warned that they do not go by miles per hour there, so I was not speeding. Of course, they said, we pulled you over for speeding. Okay. From that point forward, I realized I have zero control over the situation. This is not like when getting pulled over in America, because the first thing they said was, I don't know what would happen if she were to be put in jail. And they pointed at the young lady who was sitting to my right, because I was driving. What does that mean? How much money do you have is what they asked me. How much money does she have is what they asked me. We gathered up all our money. They took it. They then proceeded to escorting us back to the border and seeing us out, and they did this as we crossed back into America. I will never go to Mexico again. I told my wife. Later on, met my wife, got married. We used to do cruises a lot. This one's going to Mexico, it's really cheap. No, never, ever will I go back to that country. It is lawless. There is no one to call when the S goes down. I can't imagine what it would be like if they took us and held us for ransom and asked the United States federal government for money. Because the alternative to the government not giving them money is killing us. That's what happened. Again, I don't know if we paid for those people, but I also don't know how we got them back. And the fact that it's not very clear as to how we got them back says we probably had to pay. What is the moral of this story? The moral of this story is an absolute tragedy happened to 4 young black Americans. We have to stop jumping on causes. We have to realize the dangers of the causes that we're getting behind, and do some research, because black people will tell you in a second, I don't do politics. Okay, that's fine. How about now? Do you think she's going to now have the same feeling that she had about the border as she did before she went to go get that tummy tuck? And I don't know her politics. I don't care. I'm making a general point as to how we breeze by the topic of politics, and we do it so much, and we're the ones affected by it the most. Our jobs, our schools, our communities, violent crime, regular crime, it's all affected by the border. But we're looking at the people, and we're looking at civil rights, and we're saying, hey, we've been there. I'm with you, bro. It's not a smart way to live life. It's not a smart way to handle politicians, because they will always be able to dupe you. They will always be able to use you. They will always be able to discard you. I encourage more black Americans to stop getting into other people's social causes and start focusing on ours, and stop being upset when Candace Owens brings up issues in the black community, because she shouldn't be airing our dirty laundry in public in front of white people. Nobody else does that. Nobody else does that. Everybody else says we need to talk about it, including you guys. Everybody else does, and we're staying at the bottom of that totem pole, and we can't figure out why. Every single cause starts with black people. You want to kill your baby? If you don't, you're impacting black people. The black and trans community, somehow trans gets thrown in there. Brown people and black people need to be able to kill their babies. Like, every cause runs through us. We need to do better. We have to do better. We've got to. Because it's impossible for us to move forward. It's impossible for us to move forward We support people, we support causes, we don't look into it. And that's the kind of thing that can get you killed. And every time somebody wants to talk about our issues, we point fingers at white people. Well, white people kill white people also. It's about where you're raised. There's no way to come up with solutions by doing that. None.